Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. And last night, we had Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals where the Boston Celtics completed their sweep of the Indiana Pacers. It was a really competitive series regardless of it being a sweep. The Pacers fought back in every single game. It was really close in Game 4. They led for a majority of the second half, had a lead in the final few minutes like they did most nights, but just weren't able to close it out. It was, to me, it felt like a bit of an experience thing between the two teams. The Celtics, having been to a finals before, this is now their second finals appearance in the past 3 seasons, and having made a number of runs to conference finals, it was clear that they knew what to do and executed down the stretch of those games. While the Pacers were turning the ball over a lot, we kind of get away from what got them there and just struggled to put together consistent possessions. It's a learning experience for the Pacers, and overall, before I talk a lot about Boston, who I do want to focus this video around, I want to give some props to Indiana because they did keep the series really close despite the sweep, and no one expected them to be here. This was a team that I don't think anybody picked to be in the Eastern Conference Finals before the season. They, of course, saw Tyrese Haliburton become an all-NBA level player. You saw Pascal Siakam come into the fold of things, and he and Tyrese struggled a little bit to gel at the beginning of the acquisition, but in the playoffs, you saw them have some really good moments, and everybody on this team stepped up at one point or another, whether it was Miles Turner having one of the best seasons of his career. Andrew Nembhard is somebody that a lot of people really believe in now because he went crazy in this playoff run, showing a ton of potential. Aaron Nesmith has become one of my favorite role players in the league. Guys like Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell was ridiculous in a number of these games. The Pacers got a bunch of contributions. They exceeded all expectations. I know some people are going to say that, oh, they had an easy run because teams were injured, but you still have to win those games. You still have to execute. And again, they kept it close against a really good Boston team. I think there's no reason to shade the Pacers for this run. It was a massive overachievement from where people saw them at the beginning of the season. It's a learning experience, and now they know what they need to do in the offseason to build this team up more. They're still really young, assuming they re-sign Pascal Siakam, which I imagine they'll do. This is a team that has the chance to be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference for years to come. This is just the beginning, and I'm really excited to see what they do from here. Quickly became one of my favorite teams to watch in the NBA this season. With that being said, let's talk about the Celtics. I don't think anybody's surprised that they were here in the ECF. I don't think anybody's surprised that they're the Eastern Conference champions. That, to me, always felt like the path it was going to go. I picked them to not only win the East, but win the finals before the season. I picked them to win the East going into the playoffs, saying that they weren't going to face much resistance. And really, once the Bucks didn't turn out to be the powerhouse that I was expecting them to be this season, it was very clear that there was no equal for the Celtics in this entire Eastern Conference. Some people have continued to talk about the fact that they played somewhat injured teams, with Jimmy Butler not playing for Miami in the first round, and Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen missing some time in the second, Tyrese missing some games in the Eastern Conference Finals. It wouldn't have mattered. I think the Celtics would have stormed their way through the Eastern Conference regardless of who played or who didn't. And I think people also aren't being charitable enough to the Celtics, who are without Kristaps Porzingis, who is a really big piece of what this team does on both ends. Offensively, gives them a big floor spacer, gives them a new dynamic in the post as a scorer there, as well as just a connective playmaker, some height, a vertical threat. Porzingis does a lot for this team. Rebounding, of course, as well as big from him. And then you talk about on the defensive end, being able to slow down guys from attacking the basket, be able to switch out on the perimeter and provide some length out there, deter guys away from the rim. Porzingis is incredibly important to the Celtics. So sure, they played some injured teams, but they were injured almost this entire run themselves. The only games that Porzingis played were the first few of that matchup against Miami. So against Cleveland and Indiana, no Kristaps Porzingis, and yet the Celtics pretty much breezed their way through the Eastern Conference Finals. There were some close games, but honestly, I think that's good for the Celtics because one of the concerns for them throughout the season coming into these playoffs was how are they going to execute in the clutch, which has been an issue for Boston as a franchise for what feels like years at this point. And against the Pacers, they went ahead and got the job done consistently. They didn't lose a single clutch game this entire run. The only 2 games they lost were one against Miami, one against Cleveland, where they just got ridiculously hot from 3 and couldn't miss. And that's today's NBA. Any team can beat anybody on any given night because of stuff like that. So when it got down to the games that there wasn't this crazy variance, the Celtics never lost. And it was truly an all-around team effort. Jayson Tatum led the team in points, rebounds, and assists up until this point. He has been their best player, also playing some great defense. There have been some moments where the shooting hasn't been as efficient as you would like it to be, and I do still think they need a bit more efficient shooting from Jayson Tatum in the finals if they want to go ahead and beat probably the Dallas Mavericks, who are seemingly going to come out of the Western Conference. But overall, Tatum, I felt like was perfectly fine in this run. last night against the Pacers in the closeout game. 26 points, 13 rebounds, 8 assists, and a steal. Shot 11 of 26 from the floor, played against some really good defense. It's what he's been doing all season. Jayson Tatum is really, really good. I feel like he gets some unfair criticisms at times. There is definitely valid stuff, and I talked about a lot of that in my Jayson Tatum problem video that I put up not too long ago, where basically I said he's really good and he's one of my favorite players, but there are some moments where I definitely want to see him be more efficient. And again, when they get to the finals where they are now, when they play that series, they're going to need him to be a little bit more reliable. I imagine he will be, that he'll step up to that moment. But the good thing for the Celtics is, even when Jayson Tatum's struggling, they're still able to pretty easily pick up wins. And I've seen people more so use that as a knock on Jayson Tatum, as opposed to a thing that you can go ahead and compliment the Celtics for, because they found a way to build up all this talent around him, where even if their best player and arguably top 6-7 guy isn't performing, they can still go ahead and get big time wins. Like we saw a number of times throughout these playoffs, you see a guy like Jaylen Brown step up, who went out there and won Eastern Conference Finals MVP after last year against the Heat in the ECF had maybe his worst playoff series ever, at least one of them since he became a star. He stepped up here and was dominant. 29 points last night, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, and a block, 50% shooting from both the field and 3. JB was incredibly reliable, and he was also really good defensively. You can debate whether or not he or Tatum should have won the award. It was split basically right down the middle, with Jaylen Brown having one more vote than Tatum to win it, but I think it's very fair to give it to Jaylen Brown, the way that he elevated himself in the wake of what happened last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, as well as hitting that big shot in the corner to go ahead and get game 1 to overtime. That was the shot of the series. Maybe things change. If they don't go ahead and win that game 1, maybe they lose some confidence. So I completely understand giving it to Jaylen Brown, and I think it speaks a lot to what he's done throughout the season to put the criticisms away. People saying that he couldn't dribble with his left hand, that he wasn't worth the contract the Celtics gave him, that they were going to have to trade him at some point. A lot of crazy stuff was being said about Jaylen Brown in the offseason, and here he is hoisting up the Eastern Conference Finals MVP trophy. It was a wildly impressive series from him. It's been a really impressive run all throughout, and they're going to need more of this from Jaylen Brown, and I'm expecting it at this point. He's someone who's really proven a lot of the narratives wrong. You've also got great play from like Jrue Holiday and Derrick White, the best defensive backcourt in the league pretty clearly. Derrick White hasn't been shooting as great as he has since that Heat series over the past 2 matchups, but it's still been great defensively. Last night had 16 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 steals, and 3 blocks. He is unbelievable, as well as Jrue Holiday having 17 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists. Had a couple of really good games here in this series against Indiana. It has been great all throughout this run. Some big-time defensive plays, especially in Game 3, going ahead and getting the stop on Andrew Nembhard that got the Celtics the win. He has always been able to make those clutch defensive plays. It's what he does in these playoff settings, and they've asked more from both those guys in the absence of Kristaps Porzingis to bolster the offense, and they have stepped up tremendously. That's the strength of this team, is that they have this ridiculously talented starting 5, as well as some solid guys off the bench, that they're able to produce and basically not miss a beat, despite missing a guy in KP who was right there on the fringe of being an all-star this season. Both those backcourt guys are going to have their hands full going up against the Mavericks in the NBA Finals, trying to guard Luka and Kyrie, or maybe they put like a Jaylen Brown on Luka to give him a little bit more size, maybe even Tatum. I've seen some people suggest. This is all stuff we'll talk about when I make my NBA Finals preview video. Again, this is assuming the Timberwolves don't do something no team has ever done and come back from down 0-3, which I guess is still technically possible. Game 4 has not been played as I'm recording this. Also want to give a shout to Al Horford, who has been a bit up and down when it comes to shooting the 3 ball. Some games he's not missing, like in Game 3. In Game 1, it was really rough, but regardless, Al Horford has been a steady presence for them at the 5 in the wake of KP being hurt, and when he comes back, that's going to be a massive boost to this team. It's good for them that they went ahead and got him some rest. They didn't have to rush him back to try and win the East. They're able to just go ahead and coast to this victory now. He's going fresh legs to go up against Dallas, where they're really going to need him. They're going to need his ability to stretch the floor, get like Derrick Lively and Daniel Gafford away from the paint, to be able to attack inside, put some pressure on those 2 guys, open up the game for the others. Porzingis is going to have to be big for them. They need him to be back and playing at a high level to beat the Dallas Mavericks, and I think he's going to be back and ready to go. Some good bench guys that deserve a shout out: Sam Hauser, Payton Pritchard. Both were not super crazy in this game, 5 points from each, but overall have given them a lot of contributions. Oshae Brissett also had a pretty good game a couple of nights ago, so I want to give him a shout out. And yeah, the Celtics make it back to the NBA Finals. Again, not surprised. There was never an equal to them in the Eastern Conference all throughout this year. They ran away with the first seed. Even if every team was at full strength, nobody would have touched the Boston Celtics, I believe, throughout these playoffs. Maybe going into next year that changes, but for the moment, they're not only the Eastern Conference champions, but I think it was pretty clear they always were going to be. Also want to show some love to Joe Mazzulla, one of the youngest coaches to ever make it to the NBA Finals, and Brad Stevens for putting this whole thing together. Has very quickly gone from one of the best coaches in the league when he was coaching this team to one of the best GMs easily in the NBA right now. Very few guys are finding value the way that he does. The fact that they got Kristaps Porzingis and first round picks in that trade with Marcus Smart involved, completely ridiculous. Their ability to go ahead and grab Jrue Holiday, flipping him back over to the Eastern Conference after the Bucks trade him, adding that championship guard, replacing some of that grit and defensive tenacity that people were worried about the Celtics losing with the Smart trade. Basically like that. He has been amazing as their general manager. Like the Derrick White trade they made was a fleece as well. Just feels like he never really loses trades, finds a lot of talent basically everywhere, and takes advantage of all possible avenues to now build this powerhouse in the East that, again, really didn't have an equal this entire season. We'll see what happens going up against the winner of the Western Conference, probably the Dallas Mavericks. Again, I will have a full NBA Finals preview video out about that series not too long after it's set in stone, doing a wait, in case the Timberwolves pull off the impossible. But for the moment, those are my thoughts on the Boston Celtics and their run-up until this point. I don't agree with everybody saying that it was a fluke, that they got lucky because they got the easiest route ever. They ran away with the 1 seed. That's the reason you push for the 1 seed, is to get the easiest route you can, and they beat who was in front of them. They did it while only losing 2 games. It's not like they went to multiple game 7s. They won pretty convincingly. Here they are in the NBA Finals, where they're going to be a tough team to beat. I'm really excited for the prospect of that Mavericks-Celtics series. There's a lot to go into, a lot of fun storylines, but for the moment, I appreciate you watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Comment down below what were your thoughts on this Celtics run, on where they are at the moment, and their chances going into the NBA Finals. If you're a Celtics fan, what's your confidence level at right now? I'm curious to know. But yeah, like I said, I appreciate you watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say back.